I don't know if you know this, but there's a new king of Burgerland, and his name is McDonald Trump. So what does Sushi Land think of Burgerland? Well, they be loving it. The Prime Minister of Sushi Land is Shigeru Ishiba, a Christian who is extremely complimentary of President Trump. Ishiba says he believes that God himself saved Trump from the assassin's bullet, and he describes Trump as being very sincere and powerful with a strong will for the peace of the whole world. Ishiba even presented Trump with a golden helmet, which seems to imply that Tom Cruise is no longer the last samurai. Sorry, dude. Trump, for his part, was equally complimentary of Ishiba. Trump described the Prime Minister as strong, handsome, and a great leader for Japan, a country which Trump calls one of the great civilizations of the world, and a true friend and ally to the United States. Wow, what a weeb! Of course, all of this went down at the White House on February 7th, 2025. And of course, the reason for the meeting was to discuss Japan's economic and strategic relationship with the United States. Because of these guys, Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba wants to build up Japan's military. Donald Trump wants to eliminate the $68 billion trade deficit with Japan. Thus, the two parties are seeking out a mutually beneficial exchange of love, friendship, and of course, ballistic missile defense systems. But this is not the first time Donald Trump demonstrated positive rapport with Japanese leadership. Famously, throughout the entirety of his first run as president, Trump was often seen gallivanting around with his super best friend, the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Obviously, world leaders typically have these kinds of diplomatic public relationships, where they're seen shaking hands and exchanging gifts. But these two seem to have had something special going on, not excluding this legendary 19-second handshake that took Abe's breath away, literally. And after Shinzo Abe was assassinated by a gunman in Japan on July 8, 2022, Trump repeatedly paid tribute and respect to his fallen friend and ally.
His assassination is not only a grievous atrocity, it's a devastating loss for the entire world. We will miss him greatly.
Most recently by having Shinzo Abe's widow, Akie Abe, as a guest at Mar-a-Lago, a meeting which occurred as a private affair between friends, outside of the normal diplomatic channels. So Trump was friends with Shinzo Abe, so what? Well, Shinzo Abe wasn't just some regular guy. Shinzo Abe has ties to Sega-Sammy, and therefore, by proxy, so too does Donald Trump. See where I'm trying to go here? Here's Shinzo Abe at a dinner for Indian businessmen in 2011. And who's this I see? Why, it's Sega-Sammy chairman Hajime Satomi. The same Hajime Satomi who purchased Sega from CSK after the failure of the Dreamcast in the early 2000s. Let me tell you a tale of long ago. Shinzo Abe's grandfather was Nobusuke Kishi, himself the Prime Minister of Japan from 1957 to 1960. But before that, just before World War II, Nobusuke Kishi was the economic manager of Imperial Japanese Manchuria, and it was while he was in Manchuria that Kishi became close business partners and friends with a man named Hajime Satomi, the so-called Opium King of Manchuria. When the Japanese invaded China, Manchuria is in China, one nefarious strategy they employed was the sale of weaponized opium. By pushing narcotics on the Chinese populace, it was believed that the Japanese military and government would have an easier time exerting total control. Hajime Satomi was the head of a Shanghai-based company called Hongqi Shantang, which orchestrated the acquisition and production of opium on behalf of the Japanese government. An extremely lucrative trade worth an estimated 300 million Chinese yuan a year. Many government officials were on the payroll of Hongqi Shantang, including Shinzo Abe's grandfather, Nobusuke Kishi. And we know that Nobusuke Kishi, the former Prime Minister Kishi, Shinzo Abe's grandfather, must have been pretty good friends with Hajime Satomi, the Opium King. Because in 1965, after Satomi passed away, it was Prime Minister Kishi himself who rendered his so-called last honors and engraved his headstone. Now, Hajime Satomi has a son, born in 1942, and that son is none other than Hajime Satomi, the founder of Sammy. the pachinko company that would eventually acquire Sega in 2004, marking the creation of Sega-Sammy Holdings. The son of the Opium King of Manchuria is the founder and current chairman of the board of Sega-Sammy Holdings. The dude owns Sega, and the Opium King's grandson, Haruki Satomi, currently runs the company. All of the Sega-Sammy companies, in fact. It's very clear that the late Shinzo Abe and the Satomi family had a strong personal and professional connection with each other, and they seem to get into all the same kinds of trouble. But could Donald Trump, the super best friends of Shinzo Abe, be in any way wrapped up in their shenanigans? It wouldn't be the first time that Trump got involved with Sega. Here he is in 1989 shaking hands with David Rosen, the founder of Sega, at the Sega Genesis launch party. How many Sega Genesis games has Donald Trump ever played? Probably zero. But what if all these tariffs that Trump imposed on China were in some way part of a secret plan? What if Trump and his friend's grandfather's friend's son and grandson are colluding to jack up the price of all new video game consoles? Like, for instance, the Switch 2. This is already a serious problem that's affected Nintendo, and it's forced them to move production out of China. Imagine that. Something that isn't being made in China. And what if higher priced game consoles being made outside of China is just the perfect opportunity Sega needs to stage their big comeback in America? Introducing the Sega Dreamcast 2, the American Dream. A Sega console with exclusive access to Sega's rich legacy of games being made right here where I stand in the United States of America. Sure, it would cost too much, use too much electricity, and you know it's gonna weigh a ton, but at the very least, it would be ours. And then, finally, I could replay the Skies of Arcadia, the greatest game ever made. Come on, Sega, do it. Make America great again. But of course, I'm just kidding. While it is interesting that Donald Trump's deceased friend Shinzo Abe has some ties to the founder of Sega-Sammy, and that the same founder is the son of a guy who was, according to some Japanese journalists, the notorious Opium King of Manchuria, there is no reason to think that Donald Trump has any interest in Sega or video games in general. The tariffs on China are part of an economic strategy intended to do exactly what's already happening, and that's move production outside of China. And Nintendo is doing that, but they are going to Vietnam, not America. So obviously the Dreamcast 2 will need to do something similar, the Viet Dream. So what do you all think about any of this? Did you know that Sega-Sammy's Satomi family had ties to opium production in China? Did you know that the Yakuza tried to kill Hajime Satomi in 2015? Do you think that maybe those Yakuza games might be a bit of self-aggrandizing propaganda? Let us know what you think and more in the comments. And thank you very much for watching Creative Cat Productions. Bye-bye now.